Sangye Shindu Mite Uvardi Rokunanda Shinna Chuparsho Iram Viratnamanda Kandriyatayami Sangye Chiram Soki Chunamba Janchu Vadu Yagni Yasuchi Taki Jinyen Gibe Sunanti Jola Penchir Sangye Jupasha Sangye Chiram Soki Chunamba Janchu Vadu Yagni Yasuchi Taki Jinyen Gibe Sunanti Jola Penchir Sangye Jupasha Sangye Chiram Soki Choknamba Janchu Vadu Yagni Yasuchi Taki Jinyen Gibe Sunanti Jola Penchir Sangye Jupasha.
Please get comfortable. We'll start with a 12-minute meditation, the same one we've done last week. Let's start by relaxing. Begin to let go. Begin to settle your body. Begin to let your body breathe. Relax. Relax your face, your eyebrows, the corners of your mouth, your neck, down your shoulder, down your back, your hips, moving all the way down to your feet. And allow your breath to move in and out naturally. Then let's begin to settle our mind, releasing all your concerns, any anxiety or stress, fears, insecurities. Using your breath, just gently let it go. And then begin to let go of any noise, any chit-chat that occupies the space of the mind. And you're simply just focusing on your breath. Now we'll move into the first question, which is, what would it feel like right now to be truly happy? What would your happiness, the things you want the most, what would that feel like? And as these ideas come to mind, begin to use your breath so that in every out-breath, you arouse the aspiration, the feeling, the wish that you want to have. And then begin to move into the realm of possibility. So with each out-breath, imagine what it would look like. Imagine and embody what this world looks like and feels like for you. The fulfillment, the joy, the happiness that you so deeply seek. And then let's move on to the second question, which is understanding that in order to realize the happiness that we seek, we know that our lives are all intertwined. So, in order to realize the happiness, what would you love to receive from the world around you? What would that feel like? What kind of support do you need? You can use each in-breath to arouse the feeling, this aspiration that you so wish to have. Now for the remainder of the time, begin to visualize and embody, drawing the power of your imagination. Imagine you're receiving all that you truly need. Imagine what that looks like and what that feels like. We are going to go into karma deeper tonight. We're going to be talking about the mind-only school, moving out of we're going to be moving out of the Abhidharma school for just for a hot sec, and moving into mind-only and one of the highest schools. We're going to be a little more technical today. I know. I'll do the best I can. I'm just going to caveat that. Just an overview, right? I've brought this up just to give us a sense of where we are. So the last few classes we've been in very much in the Abhidharma school, right? Which is the second to last. Now, there's we see these school systems as like lowest to highest. It's not really meant to be like, if you're the lowest, you're the lowest in the pecking order. what it really is speaking to is your capacity. All of these are valid. All these are different practices. We have different practices that we primarily focus on here. When we've talked about karma so far, we've really focused on what's the knowledge that's called Abhidharma school. You don't need to worry about it if it doesn't relate to you. That's fine. Just know that there's more technical stuff so that I'm not sitting up here teaching like woo karma. That's not what this is. This is like based in scripture. Okay. The next school that we're going to talk about tonight will be primarily in the mind-only school. It's a Mahayana type of school, but it is mind-only, and you'll quickly see why it's called mind-only. And we're also going to be talking about the Prasangika school, which is the highest school. It's considered a middle way, which we'll kind of talk about what that means. And so we're going to look at two different expressions or interpretations or logic of how they look at karma. Okay. And these are all just building blocks for you. Some of it you'll retain, some of it you won't, some of it you'll come back again in a year or so later. But it's my responsibility to deliver the content. Okay. So can we start by saying Uma, Gompa, Rapsal. Again, Uma, Gompa, Rapsal. Okay. What is Uma? Okay. Middle way. So when you hear the word or the name, we hear Uma a lot as a popular name. It's kind of been a new trend in the last decade or so. That's what it is. Uma, middle way. Gompa. What is Gompa is real intent. And Rapsal, which is total clarification. Okay. So Uma, Gompa, Rapsal is the total illumination of the real intent of the middle way. It's the name of the scripture. It's the name of the commentary that we're going to be basing. I know you're like, how is that, that title? That's what it is. It's written by Jason Kappa. And when we talk about middle way, what we're saying is that you're basically avoiding the two extremes. We're saying that it's not nihilism. It's not that nothing exists, and it's not self-existing. Doesn't mean that everything exists self-existently. Does that make sense? It's not, it's often where sometimes you'll hear practitioners be like, nothing. Okay. So I'll give you the example. This will be good. We'll do what's up here. So we're going to do the emptiness example. Okay. Really quick. What is this?
Chapstick.
If I had my dog come into the room and it was sitting right here, what would she think that was? Food, right? What else would she think that would be? Something. Would she think it's chapstick? She's like, I'm going to use that to... No. A toy, right? So if my dog came into the room and I had this here, I definitely know that she would not think it's chapstick. She would think it's some sort of toy that she can chomp on or something that she can eat on, right? Right? My scent's all over it. Something about the smell. So the question then is this a toy for my dog or is this chapstick? It's still chapstick. It's chapstick.
Oh.
It's both. You're right. It is both. And why is it both? How can it be both? How can it be a chew toy and a chapstick?
Because it's just the way the observer is defining it.
It's the way the observer is defining it. And so that basic principle, that concept here is the concept that's broken down in very simplified form, but it's the concept of emptiness. It means that this chapstick is empty of it's empty of itself. It means that this chapstick does not self-existently exist. It does exist. It does function. There is something here. There's a certain color to it. There's a certain shape to it. There's a certain size. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. But what I am saying is that according to the Buddhist philosophy of the concept of emptiness in this school, I'm trying to make sure I'm like in the right school. So I don't screw you up and you're like, what? The basic principle that we're talking about within this school is that this chapstick doesn't have its own self-existent nature. If it was self-existent, it means that every time I would pull this out, anytime, any country, any place, any age, any being would see this, they'd be like, oh, of course, that's a chapstick. It would actually be announcing to you, chapstick, chapstick, chapstick. And the idea here is that it doesn't do that. That you're actually, that the chapstick doesn't have a self-existent nature that is announcing to you that it's a chapstick, but rather you are projecting onto it that it is a chapstick. Right? Does that make sense? That works, right? Okay. So then we'll take the...
I'm sorry, isn't it announcing? You just said it existed, right? So isn't it announcing?
Well, there's something that exists.
So it's announcing to me and the dog that it's of a certain shape, of a certain size, of a certain weight, if I pick it up.
Sure.
So it does have, in that respect...
It functions.
Yeah, I mean,
totally.
It's not self-defining, but it does have an inherent nature.
It has a nature of its own. Yeah, sure. I mean, it's the same thing with me, right? I'm here.
Right.
There's something like, I think I'm here, right? I have an inherent nature. So it's not saying that it doesn't exist. And that's why it's so tricky about these idea of these two extremes, because it's easy to go from one extreme and be like, nothing exists. That's not true. It's not existing. That's ridiculous. I mean, you go out in the world and you're like, nothing exists, and you decide to walk in front of a car. Well, I mean, you clearly won't exist in this form, in this life, right? So don't do that. That's not the point. But it's also saying it's not the other extreme, where it's saying it's self-existent. That it's saying that if I were self-existent, right? If I was inherent and I was self-existent and you knew me as G, then the only perception that anybody could possibly have whenever I go around anywhere in the world is G. But that's not true. Everyone, how many G's are in the room? Exactly. There's so many different, and so this idea is just that, so I'm bringing it up and we'll go into detail about how karma works and how seeds are planted. But I'm bringing this up fundamentally because so that you understand when we think about two extremes, when you hear nihilism and self-existent, it's basically saying it's not that nothing exists. That's not what the philosophy is saying. And it's not saying that everything is self-existent. And it's actually talking about the middle way. Okay? All right. Can we say Sem Sampa?
Sem Sampa.
Okay. So Sem Sampa is the mind only. It means mind only. That's the school, the Sem Sampas. So we're going to be talking about the Sem Sampas, the mind only school, and the Prasangikas, which was the highest school that we just saw on that chart. We're basically going to be talking about these two schools that are debating. We love debates in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. So that's what we're going to talk about. And we're going to talk about what the mind only school says about how karma is created, where it goes, and where it stays. Yes.
So the text that we're studying is Jason Kappa's commentary on
the illumination of the path.
So his commentary of illumination is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Original text, isn't it?
I'm sorry, what?
Is it an original text, not a commentary?
From my knowledge, it's a commentary. It's his commentary on that text, and that's the text that we're talking about. Jason Kappa didn't write, he wrote commentaries of text.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to start with, let's say you have someone yelling at you, right? And from what we know about karma, when this person's yelling at you, what does that mean for you?
You feel that someone else needs that.
If you yell at someone, what's going to happen? You get yelled out. That's like the basic kind of fundamental, like produces like, right? So you have this person yelling at you, and how does that karma ripen? And so what the mind only school says that there's actually 3 elements that we need to look at when this happens. Can we say Miki Wangpo? Miki Wangpo is going to be what we call, we're going to talk about this specifically in terms of one faculty. I know this is going to be confusing, so just bear with the terms and then I can kind of show you a visualization. So Miki Wangpo specifically is called eye faculty. It's your actual eye. It's like the optic nerves, it's the eyeball, it's the iris, it's the actual like physical eye and everything that allows it to function like an eye. Okay? Miki Wangpo, okay? Now, can we say Miki Namshe?
Miki Namshe.
Okay. Miki Namshe is what we call the eye consciousness. Bless you. So in the mind-only school, they say there's a physical eye, like your eyeball, literally that you know of, as you know it. And then they have something called the Miki Namshe, which is the eye consciousness. It's the awareness of understanding that your eye actually exists. Okay. It's the awareness, in particular, the eye consciousness. It's the awareness associated with your eyeball. It's so that when you observe something, so you have what is your eyeball and you have this consciousness. And when someone is screaming at you, you absorb that vision. Your eye takes in that image of that person. And then that translates into your eye consciousness. Okay. I try to illustrate it the best way I can, right? It kind of works. Like that works. I'm going through like, how would I do this? Okay.
What's the yul?
Oh yeah. So yul is the object. So here it's like the person yelling at you. Okay. So your eye faculty is the thing that discerns, like, it's the ability to perceive, and your consciousness is simply just aware of what it's perceiving. It's not interpreting here. It's not saying, oh, that person is, young, old, man, woman. There's no interpretation. It just simply is saying, okay, there's information, there's some sort of data going in to this optic nerve through the eye faculty, and there is some sort of consciousness, they're saying, for the eye. Now, all the consciousnesses, which we'll talk about, there's multiple, because in this tradition, in Tibetan Buddhism, all the schools believe this, we have more than one consciousness. They have 6 consciousnesses, which we'll briefly talk about. But this is in particular to the eye. So they're saying that when you see someone screaming at you, there is the eye faculty that actually can take in the information, and then it travels or associated to your eye consciousness that is able to discern that it is a certain color, it's a certain shape, it's a certain size, does that make, right? Okay, cool. We're all good?
But it still isn't categorizing those things.
Not
it's
yet.
Still raw information.
It's still like, it's very raw. That's a good way to put it. It's like raw data. Yeah. Okay. Can we say bakchak? What's bakchak?
Potential energy.
Yeah. Bakchak. So they say it's mental seed, but it's also considered like a karmic energy, or a mental imprint, or a karmic seed, or energetic potential is really nice. That's like I like that. That's a nice way to put it. Okay. That's what a bakchak is. Okay. Can we say kunchi?
Kunchi.
A kunchi is a foundation consciousness. You're like, what? I'll show you what that means. It's the basis consciousness is another way to put it. It's the kunchi is where all of your bakchaks are stored. So based on the mind-only school, now the mind-only school believes this. Not all the schools believe this, but the mind-only school basically says, okay, so we have these bakchaks, we have these like mental seeds, we have all these ideas, these thoughts that are happening in their mind stream constantly, right? Where do these karmic seeds, where do the karmic seeds go? Where do they go? They have to go somewhere. And so what they've crafted within their philosophy in that school is they go into the kunchi. The kunchi is like a pocket. It's like a storage unit for all your bakchaks to go into. Does that sound crazy? It's like a party. It's a kunchi party. The mind-only school believes that the kunchi exists. The mind-only school believes in 2 more different consciousnesses than the other schools. The other schools have 6 standard, and what are the 6 standards that we know of?
Your senses?
Sorry, what? Yeah.
5 senses.
What are they? Yeah.
Taste, touch.
Right. It's your 5 senses in your mind, right? So there's they have 6 consciousnesses. This is not one of those 6. This is like a separate consciousness. they believe in 8 consciousnesses. We're not going to talk about the 8th one, but this is another additional. So the foundation consciousness is a whole separate category. It's like a whole pool that holds all of your bakchaks, but it's not part of those 6 consciousnesses that they talk about. Okay. So what they say is, all right, so now we have all these mental seeds that are popping and they're stored somewhere. They're stored in your kunchi. And what happens is when one of the kunchis starts to expand and it ripens, at that moment, you start to have your I faculty and your I consciousness also arise from it. Okay. I'm going to say that one more time. When the time comes, so the karmic seeds are just like regular seeds that grow. And when the karmic seeds, when you do a certain action, when you're doing something, it stores that seed, that action that you did, and it puts it into the kunchi. And when at the right time, when the conditions are correct, the karmic seed, the bakchak, will actually grow. And when it ripens to be expressed by showing itself by being the I faculty and the I consciousness. Does that make sense? I know you're like, sure, of course. That sounds really normal. What they're saying is that because of the bakchak's influence, the kunchi produces a mental event that emanates as your consciousness of being able to understand what you're seeing and the I itself. That everything that you're seeing, your I, and what your awareness of your I and the visuals that you take in is all mind. Like your I is a manifestation. It's an emanation of your kunchi, of your mind, of your consciousness. That it's not like it's that these karmic seeds, these mental seeds, these bakchaks, they trigger, and so they allow, when that happens, your kunchi, although it's also a pocket for all of your bakchaks, it's also your consciousness, and that when at that moment, when your I physically, you think that your I physically exists, what they're saying is just an emanation of your mind. All of it is mind. That's what the mind-only school believes in.
Your optic nerve in your eye doesn't exist at all?
They're saying that it exists, but it's an emanation of your mind. That it's all your mind happening. Your mind is creating your actual eyeball and your eye consciousness in order for that whole thing to work. Like it's all an expression of your mind.
Could you just walk through, so you see a guy.
Okay, so so then we have this guy, right? So what they're basically saying, when a person yells at you, at that moment, the person, based on the bakchak's influence, once that bakchak ripens, your kunchi emanates as the person yelling at you. It emanates as your I, and it produces your consciousness. They're saying that this whole thing that you're seeing up here, that chart of these 3 aspects, is your mind that's producing it into the world. It is real life, all feeling virtual reality that's coming from your mind.
But the chapstick exists, right? We already said the chapstick exists in some form or another.
There is a different school, right?
Well, it is a different school, but this isn't too far off from the highest school.
Right. So if the chapstick exists in one form or another, the yelling guy exists in one form or another.
It exists.
I might be projecting anger on.
Sure. I mean, it exists. It functions and it exists, but it doesn't exist self-existently, and exists because your mind is projected into the world. What the mind-only school fundamentally believes that everything is mind-only. Everything that you experience, all the things that you experience, everything that you see, the persons, the people, the things that we touch, everything is an emanation of your mind.
Right, but I'm sorry to be...
No, please. I mean, of course.
You keep saying something and then you keep saying something else. Like if you're saying it's the middle way...
No, I'm not saying that it's the middle way yet. We're talking about mind-only school right now.
But the mind-only school says your chapstick doesn't exist.
No, the mind-only school is saying that the chapstick exists as an emanation, and so I feel it this way. Yeah. No, it's like a dream. When you're in a dream, it feels all real.
But then they're saying the dog might come in and not be in the same dream, and therefore we not even see the chew toy. I mean, it either exists as something in reality, in which case, if I'm emanating it, you can't necessarily see it. Or rather, if it exists in reality, you can see it because it exists in reality.
Well, you're making the vast assumption that reality is self-existent.
Well,
we're not living this is not.
I'm asking you if it's self-existent, because if you and I are looking at the chew toy and we're both seeing something, then that thing is self-existent.
No, it's not. That's what they're saying. It's not if you and I are looking at this chew toy together, what they're saying is it's this whole scenario, this whole situation of me holding this whole thing, it's being created based on my karma, based on my bakchak that my kunshi has emanated into this situation. This whole thing is an emanation of my mind based on my karma.
It has weight and color.
It could still have weight and color, but it's still an emanation of my mind. It still exists. I still feel it.
Why does everyone else see it? Why does the dog see it? Why does it exist when you leave the room?
Because everyone also has different karmas that are coming up too, that are also emanating different things. And that's their rationale and reasoning as to why there are different expressions.
You're insisting that every being...
I'm not insisting. I'm just teaching what is...
You're saying that every being on the planet has karma such that it will see that object.
I'm saying that I'm not saying everyone in this existence in the world doesn't see this object. Only you guys do. Not everyone in the world sees this object.
Anyone who walked in the room would see it.
Potentially, if they have the karma to.
No, they would see it. I mean, everyone on the planet feels gravity. You can say we're all generating that feeling, but then you have to be saying that we are all generating the karma of gravity.
Yeah, we are.
So are you saying...
Yeah, we do have shared karma. We have shared experiences based on our karmas.
Right. So
but what they're saying is that, what they're saying though, is that all those things are true. They're not, the laws of karma still exist here. And all the things, there still is pain and there's still suffering. They're just saying that it's all an emanation coming from my mind. They're not self-existent. You're still making the assumption that things are self-existent. You're basically trying to figure out this exists in some way, and how am I going to look at it in a way that makes sense to me? What they're saying is, dude, this thing, it's from your mind. All of it is your mind. It doesn't really exist the way you think it exists.
Right, so the problem I have is you keep saying that.
Yeah.
And then you say, oh, but it exists. It has mass and whatever.
I say it functions, and it does. So let's start this way then. When I first started with talking about emptiness, I was talking about the general concepts of emptiness. Now we're in the mind-only school, and it actually still does apply. But if it does seem to trip you up, then let's just focus on what the mind-only school is saying. And what they're saying is that everything, all the experiences that you have, even including your physical body and your physical pain, is something that is emanating from your mind. Does it mean that you physically don't exist? Does it mean that you're not here? You're here. It's just from your mind.
So every time you say that,
it confuses you.
It doesn't confuse me. I think it's a complete contradiction. It doesn't confuse me at all. I think you're just contradicting me.
It's just the mind-only school. That's what they think.
What's the definition of existing?
It's something that you're experiencing. It's an experience that you're having. You can put it that way. So maybe that's the word that would help.
It's just the source is the mind. That's it. But when you think about every object or every fruit or vegetables, where they come from, what is the source? For me personally, it's from God. You know what I'm saying? So I'm confused too, but I understand what you're saying.
The higher school has a slightly different definition of it, which is how we talk about the pen. The chapstick or the pen. The Prasangika school has a different way of looking at it. But the way that the mind-only school speaks about it, and it's not really that far off, honestly. The biggest thing that's actually the most far off is that the karmic seed produces subject and object. It produces the person that's seeing and the seer and the seen. Or it produces this idea, the mind-only school believes in the foundation consciousness. That's kunshi, which the higher schools do not believe in. But fundamentally, the idea of what they're saying is that when your experience of the things that you see in front of you is all in some shape or form a part of your mind that is being expressed.
I'll stop this right after this, but let me just ask one question.
Mm-hmm.
So if gravity is in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
are they saying that through a certain amount of mind training, I can overcome gravity?
Sure.
Yes.
Of course.
Have you ever seen anyone overcome gravity?
I don't have the karma to have seen that physically myself. But
That was a nice answer, but that's not what I meant.
But
You can also think about how different things relate to gravity.
totally. And also,
So that can show the emptiness of gravity.
I mean, you're either going to be...
I don't think so.
No. Okay. So there are, I mean, we're starting to go down a different path, but I think that there are what we see as supernatural powers that people do have that we don't understand why it happens and how it happens. And it doesn't make sense to us, but it does happen. There's phenomena all the time happening in the world that doesn't make sense to us or doesn't make sense to science, quite frankly. And it's like, well, what is that? How does that work? And why does that happen? And how do people have certain things and powers to do certain things while other people can't? So, and that also has to do, what they're saying is that has to do with it does have to do with your karma. That's why the more types of certain karmas you have, the more bakchaks of a certain kind you have, will then produce certain type of experiences that are expressed a certain kind of way. Meaning, the more virtuous karmas or bakchaks you have, the more virtuous experiences you have. The more pure karmas that you plant, and the more karmas that will lead you into enlightenment will therefore produce a mind that will start to experience enlightenment. That's what they're saying. I know I'm not saying that this is something that you have to believe or subscribe to, but I am sharing what our topic is today and what's in the scripture.
It's quite circular. I mean, I think you have saying, well, you can only prove it if you have the karma to see it.
Well, I think you can look at it that way, or you can sit with it and think about how that makes sense or doesn't for you. It would be unfair, and I think honestly quite assumptive to listen to content like this and be like, that's not making sense. There are like centuries of practitioners that spend so much time on these philosophies. And if it doesn't work for you, I would recommend behoove all of you to be like, it doesn't really make sense right now, but I'm going to shelve it. Because just because it doesn't make sense to you can't possibly mean that that is the only way. It doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense to me. Like, just because you don't get it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And that's not a philosophy that can't be valid.
I absolutely agree with that.
You know? So just sit with it and then see how it works or how it doesn't. But all I can tell you is that's the mind-only point of view. It is a difficult one. It's actually a quite profound one, but it also isn't that far off from the highest school of the school of thought in Tibetan Buddhism. Yes.
I just had a question here. You sort of talked about it. Is it because we're in another school that all the laws of karma we learned so far, which I know were Abhidharma based, don't apply here? So, for example, we talked about like produces like. But how can I guess I'm
totally
curious, what is the stuff of a bakchak, and how can that produce a physical yule?
Totally, yes. That's actually great. No, they do apply. No, so so that's one thing that is very unique. This one bakchak does produce these three things. But these three things are not all. This is just the eye faculty, right? It's just the eye. It's the eye part of it. Because you're going to have all the other senses that are also firing up at the same time. So we're taking this one seed and saying, just to make it easy, saying, okay, when we talk about this mental seed, it's going to produce this specific eye faculty with this kind of eye consciousness, but you have also other consciousnesses, right? That's one. Secondly, no, the laws of karmas do apply. And when we talk about mind, like does produce like, mind has to produce mind. And because they're saying mind produces mind, that's their reasoning of saying, that's how I did not produce physical matter. I'm just producing an emanation that feels and looks so physical, but it is not actual physical matter.
Does physical matter exist?
Yes.
Does physical matter exist separate from this, or is everything emanation?
Everything is your mind.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's no distinction.
There is no distinction. It would, I mean, honestly, I say this very lightly, but the best way that I was able to understand this is really when you think about a dream.
Yeah.
Like when you're in a dream state and you don't know, and you're not doing dream training, which is a whole different conversation topic we can have. But if you're not doing dream training, when you're in a dream state, you think it's all real. Like it's as if it's real.
I have no problem with existence in mind.
No, I'm not saying, but like that's, like if you think about that, things like you can have dreams and there is temperature and there is anxiety and there are emotions and there's people and there's physicality and there's the world and sometimes there isn't. I mean, there's all these different ways and that's all your mind creating a 3D virtual experience that feels very real. Like sometimes it's so real that it freaks you out and you wake up and I don't know all of you, but there are times where I've woken up and I think it's so real that I can't tell the difference for a second. Like, did that really happen? Did I just do that? Or did that happen with a friend of mine or my family member? Did someone really die? So it's almost in that way, if you think of it, like that's the best kind of analogy that I would have with the mind-only school and how they think. It's saying that, that there is no outer reality in the mind-only school. There's nothing out there at all. It's all in your mind that's being emanated. And everything is just an expression or an aspect of my mind that's being fired from my bachaks.
Does your mind exist?
You have consciousnesses that exist. Yeah, you have your various consciousness because your kunshi exists. But it's not like a thing. I don't think it's like a...
Is this what, like, in meditation, it's like a very common cue for teachers to say, who is the observer? Like, who is noticing and noticing? Is this what we're talking about? Is, like, an experiencer of all the different types of consciousnesses?
That's hard for me to speak to because it depends what lineage you're meditating on and what the subject is. And what the meditation is about. That doesn't, I'm just gonna leave it at that. I mean, when you're having meditations where you're looking at the observer, so like that happens a lot in shamatha vipassana type of meditations. Mm-hmm. That's a different lineage and practice. That's not mind only. Here's a question. Yes.
So in the mind-only school, people who are bodhisattvas, who want to seek enlightenment in order to have cessation of suffering from other people, other beings, that doesn't seem to be a motive if there's no other beings.
That's a great question. Yeah, that's a beautiful question. There is still a motivation because it feels like a reality. And it's the intention that's behind it, right? Because the reality in the mind-only school, the reality of which you experience is not random. They're not saying, okay, well, everything is my mind. Then I'm going to go into this room and I'm going to pretend I live in on the Bahamas or I'm going to transport myself to Italy and I'm going to be sitting on a cliff. Like, you can't do that. You can't just change it because you have bakchaks. I mean, the laws of karma still do apply. So your past karma is what perpetuates or is what creates the emanation, the experiences that you're having. So the idea is that you want to collect the virtuous you want to collect the virtuous karmas, irregardless, right? Even if it is an emanation of your mind, is what they would say.
So
because
they don't believe in separate life streams?
What do you mean? They don't believe in mind streams. They don't call it mind streams. They call it the kunshi.
So they don't believe that there's another person that has another kunchi.
Of course, yeah, sure.
So then you must have compassion for them. Just
Yep.
because your experience of them is from your mind, then the idea is that there is another mind stream to have compassion for.
Yeah, yes, but from my understanding is that everything is an emanation of your own mind. So what the other beings are doing is not necessarily crossing over or interacting. You're my mind, right? So if you exist as a being out there, you're going to have your own emanations that you have as well.
Right. I guess what I'm saying is to reduce other
Yeah,
beings.
it is kind of, right? It is kind of like that. I mean, it really feels like the Matrix when you think about it in that way. And that's why, like
the original writer of the text wrote it for people that were in his mind.
Totally.
Or I'm making this all up right now in my mind.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know that sounds really silly, but that's why when those movies came out, people were like, oh my God. Like that was so, because there was no way in expressing, I mean, it's going to be like this or it's like that.
I struggle to see the difference between this and nihilism.
Oh, that nothing exists?
That's why I brought up separate mind streams.
Yeah. No, because, I mean, it's still, everything exists. It just doesn't exist in the way in which you think it does. I mean, there's still all the, I know it's tricky. It's like, and let me move on and see how I think the presentation of it too is so extreme because you're like, what? But it's actually not as far off from the Prasangika presentation as you think it is. What they're basically saying is that your whole world comes from your mind. That's really what it is. I mean, and I know that, I think, to say that everything is just your mind, it does kind of freak us out because we're like, well, then nothing exists. But it does exist and things do function. And they do function, they are these, that's why when they speak about it, it's very much this idea of this emanation that's happening. It's all, Bakchaks are your intentions. Everything is motivated by that. And everything is popping and being expressed in a certain way. When you think about mind produces mind, or even that your world is coming all from your mind, that there's nothing out there self-existently, that everything is coming as an expression from your mind, that fundamentally doesn't seem that far off from the Prasangika school. But when we do talk about it as your optic nerve and your eyeball is literally being created from your bakchak, it does feel a bit far off, but
just to ask this question in a different way.
Sure.
What does the nihilist think of the chapstick?
I mean, I don't know, but I suppose that the nihilist would say that it doesn't exist at all.
But how does the nihilist explain the fact that I see the chapstick and the dog sees the chapstick?
I don't know.
In a way that's different than what you.
Oh, then the mind-only school? Well, the mind-only school isn't saying that it doesn't exist at all. It's just saying it's not out there. It's just in your mind.
So what is the nihilist saying if they're not saying it's in my mind?
That it doesn't exist at all.
So I can't see it in the nihilist school.
There is I actually don't know what a nihilist school, because we don't study nihilist schools. But the idea is that there are these extremes. The main reason that I brought that up is that there are extremes that basically nihilism, the idea is nothing exists or nothing matters. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. And the other extreme is that everything exists.
So you're saying it doesn't exist except in my mind, but it doesn't matter.
Yes.
It exists because
Because it's in your mind. Yeah.
Because it's in my mind, it matters.
Yes. Yeah.
No. Okay, I get that.
Okay.
But we just have a definitional issue. When you say it doesn't exist except in my mind, I would say that you're saying it doesn't exist in the material world. You're saying there is no material world.
There is no material world. Yeah, they're saying there is no material world outside of your mind.
Right, but you still haven't explained where your mind sits and if there's any materiality to your mind.
in the mind-only school, I don't know if there's material to your mind. I know that they believe in, like in this presentation, they do believe in the kunshi. I don't actually know if the kunshi has a material matter to it. I suspect it probably has some sort of matter to it, but I don't know for sure, actually. I can find out.
I can
But they
answer
think at least
Do you know?
one.
from Google.
Oh, God.
It says that life is meaningless, that there is
Oh, nihilism?
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, about matter? And the kunshi? I'm like,
That might be the school.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the Tibetan.
no, there is no Tibetan nihilism.
Oh.
Tibetans don't believe in nihilism. Yeah.
I thought these were like 3.
No. Tibetans don't believe in nihilism. They can't. It wouldn't make sense
Right.
for the practice.
Okay, but if these guys believe that mind exists, that somewhere, somehow in the universe, there is something called mind
There's the kunshi.
that is real.
Yeah, okay, we can use the word real.
But you're also conflating
But it's not-
real and self-existent.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Well, is it self-existent?
No.
Self-existent is not real. That's the difference. There is no such thing as a self-existent anything.
Really?
Yeah.
So the
Well,
mind,
I haven't proven it to myself yet. But that's
Yes, Rachel, that's okay.
so the mind is not self-existent.
No. They would even say the mind is not self-existent.
But it's real.
But it reflects on itself.
It doesn't, there's an emanation of it,
It
yes.
projects itself.
Yes, it does project itself.
What is the it
What's
that's doing the projecting?
The bakchaks. The bakchaks and the kunshi is what creates the projection.
Then they're self-existent. Something
It's-
must be doing the.
But it's not self-existently like a kunshi. Or else every time you see it, you'd be like, that's my kunshi.
Right, well, that's maybe my question.
you're gonna like.
I have such a problem with
It
you.
actually hurts right now. We're like,
What? Your kunshi hurts.
this is true.
I know.
You're getting to like the chicken or the egg.
Right.
I know,
Well,
right.
Force 13.
Yeah.
We'll get into it.
Yeah.
So I survived.
You survive. You'll survive.
Well, it does seem that, I mean, this framework puts the kunshi in the role of the creator. Like, I'm sorry, I don't
Yeah,
but it's
sure.
like, yeah, that's the God in
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
scenario.
It kind of does feel that way, right? Because it's your, mean God, creator meaning you being the creator.
The kunshi specifically.
Oh, like
Because you could
someone
say-
created the kunshi prior.
No, I'm saying that
Oh.
the kunshi is the creator in this.
Oh. Yeah, but the kunshi is also an aspect of you. It's like, it's not like there's a kunshi that created you. It's that the kunshi is a part of your consciousness. Of each of one of 8 consciousnesses. The kunshi is one of the 8 consciousnesses. I know.
Okay, yeah, no, you're right. I see.
Does that make sense?
So
It's-
collectively, the consciousness become the creator.
Yes.
The
Yes.
consciousness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is just one. Like this. Again, this isn't mind only, but this is like an aspect of your consciousnesses that hold all your bakchaks.
Like the memory thing.
It's kind of like a memory bank. Yeah. The store. Yes.
So is kunshi like a source energy?
They have not spoken about it that way. The only way that I've heard source energy or kind of potential energy would be in reference to bakchak, but I've not heard kunshi spoken that way. Yeah, to my knowledge. Okay. I know. I had a feeling. Like, you have no idea. I was going through this and I could hear you guys all asking questions. I'm like, okay, wait. I'm gonna hear this. And, okay. Okay. So now we have this kunshi and we have these bakchaks, and we're still in mind only. And I'm going to go through this because I know that this will be on your homework, and I know that I just want to make sure that I make your life easier. I don't really care if your homework is right or wrong, but the question will be about how karmic seeds are planted. And what they say is that it's planted through your awareness of what you do, what you say, and what you think. That's how your karmic seeds or your bakchaks are planted. What they also say too is that, and all the schools believe this, but when you yell at someone, and at the energy of yelling at someone, when that deed of yelling starts to taper off and it concludes, at that moment, as it concludes, there's residual energy. And it's that energy that actually is the thing that plants your bakchak, is what they say. So your bak-chop forms in your kunchi as, it's like, I don't know, in my mind, I kind of think of it like a tapered or like but like at the tail end, as that energy starts to kind of taper off, there's residual energy there that then is what creates the bak-chop that goes into your kunchi. Yeah.
Sorry, so the tapering off isn't necessarily the energy of the sound that your vocal cords are making, but more the intention.
Yes. I think it's like the energetic energy that actually starts to, it's not the intention, but it's energy.
Because if I'm yelling, but I'm joking,
yeah,
I'm not planting seeds of yelling at somebody because I'm totally doing it with
no
the intention of pretending or making this person feel scared just for the sake of the joke.
The energy that you'd be planting isn't necessarily the yelling so much as your intention behind it. Yeah.
So is it kind of like getting back on the horse? Like if you go through an experience, get thrown from the horse.
Yeah.
And if that's like the end of the day, and you go home with a broken arm, like that's the main karma that's planted. But if you get back up, you get back on the horse, and you go one more time around, and you know, like, okay, so this is like, it's almost like dedicating or something like that.
Yeah.
Like next time I go.
I'm trying to understand the horse thing, so I just. Sorry. I'm sorry. No. I'm like, I'm on the horse. I'm on it. Now I'm off.
So if I'm in the middle of a fight.
Yes. Okay.
And I leave the fight angry.
Yes.
As opposed to like, I'm in the middle of a fight and I yell. There's the same yelling's happening.
Yeah.
But we find a way to resolve it somehow.
Yeah.
And I my this and that, and then
totally.
As I'm coming down,
it's almost it's almost like the way I've heard it is like it's almost like when that energy of that yelling almost shifts to something else.
Uh-huh.
There's a moment that it will shift, right? Either because you're just exhausted and you've just yelled yourself out to death and you can't do it anymore, or because there's resolution or something. Before that intention or that energy shifts, there's like a tail end right before it that they're saying is basically the thing that plants your bak-chop.
Cool.
Yeah, which is really interesting, I think. Anyway.
Yeah, so,
Michael's like, yeah, okay, anyway. Back to this nihilist school. Yes.
I'm just curious. Why is that relevant? Why is it relevant that it gets planted when it's taken off versus when it's...
I actually don't. Why is it relevant in terms of...
I mean, it's just an odd piece of
information. That's how they just talk. That's how all the schools talk about the how karma is planted. That's their philosophy behind how are bak-chops planted. Like,
and so is that the kind of after the climax?
It's like after the climax. It's the residuals. What they say is what actually creates the bak-chop. It's not at the apex or at the beginning. It's the, and there's subtle ways of looking at that too, right? Because like there's feelings that we have and emotions that we have. So I don't know, actually when you bring that up, I do wonder if it has to do with, there are things that trigger us, right? They're the triggers. And it's like after that trigger is ridden, like once you ride that trigger, it's when you carry it and it's that residual that actually is the thing that picks up. Like I wonder if it's like that now that I think about it. Because you can't force, it's like, I was in traffic today and I remember and I was late for this meeting and I felt this, like I'm in traffic and it triggered anxiety, like immediately. And I can't force that because that's my bak-chop, right? Like that's something I've planted. So that I'm not like, oh yeah, I'm in traffic. This is no. I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to be late. This is an important meeting. What am I going to do? And I remember feeling that trigger happening. But at that moment, I like in that mind stream for me, I thought, okay, I have a choice. I'm going to either ride this anxiety or I need to figure out how to diffuse it. And so in that moment, I remember like feeling the sense of I got to diffuse this. And I think it might be something like that, where like you do get triggers, like someone screaming at you, and it's your general kind of. Like you have something that triggers, but it's really how do you ride that and then taper it off? That becomes the thing. Because they talk about residual, and I think that is a key thing.
Is there something special about that coming down where you could radically alter things? Like is that like a really prime energetic time?
I mean, I was going to say that
well, moment to moment karma.
Yeah.
Like with even, I was gonna make a joke about angry sex. Like, what is that?
Say the
I'll
joke.
leave that with you. But you get a moment, and it's
Everyone's like, dude, tell us the karma.
no, but like you get into a fight or you have some passion, like where you're about to like really walk out the door on something that's really important, and there is, you know, I'm angry, I'm sweaty. Ooh, my socks are off. But so within each of those moments, there's an up and a down, and there is variation of that. So I mean, first of all, talking about the tapering, it's very hard to isolate. But I also think of it a little bit like seeds are planted in reaction to something. Like the more you talk about the charge of it having a larger impact of that. So I think the tapering off, to me, talks about that, while observing that up and down in the moment to moment karmic, and like the more you could be aware of the cessation of an experience, the more you have that moment to decide again, okay,
what it's going to be. Yeah, I do think it's something like that. Like, I think that this is when we think about that residual, it's almost like the momentum that's moved you forward, that it's picking up.
Yeah.
It's like you've created that momentum and like based on your charge or your whatever that is that you brought behind it, and it's that residual end of it where you don't have necessarily control. It's what's left over after it's exhausted itself, is what it sounds like to me.
But in order to perceive that, right?
Perceive.
Is what you were getting at is that we're planting like 68 karma years now. So thinking that, in the denouement of my emotion is where I'm going to do the work is not what this is saying. It's saying as the minutia that you cannot perceive on a day-to-day basis.
Totally. Or even minute to minute, quite honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess I was going to say from a practical stance, any instance of anger must immediately be extinguished to whatever degree our capacity is. We must act immediately. We can't think that, if I wait a little bit.
For sure.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, totally. Yeah, because every minute that you prolong is another 68 seeds that you're putting in, right? Per second.
Right.
Yes, that's true.
Which multiply over and over and over.
Yes.
Okay, I think I know. Just to get 100% positive, there's only been negative examples so far. This could be.
Well, there was angry sex. I kind of had
Angry sex happen. Angry sex, if we're realistic, 100% positive.
From its own side.
From its own side.
No, that can be very. On the other half, whatever. I'm not going to get into that.
Okay.
The one that I'm trying to make it can be positive object as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Totally.
Yeah, we're just using negative because it's
of course.
Very easily.
It's also, we talked about the last course too. Like whenever
there aren't very good examples of positive object.
Yes.
But there's better of negative.
Well, it's just that what we said last class was that a lot of times in scripture when they talk about karma, they do talk about it in terms of the negative aspects of karma, not necessarily the positive, but it does work.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Double check.
Yes, of course. Yes. Yeah, it's the good things too. So even when you have bouts of joy or
we could use good sex.
Yes, you can have good sex for sure. Oh my God. Okay. Where do karmic seeds stay? So we've said that it stays in the kunchi. According to the mind only school, they say that with the bakchaks, the karmic seeds, once they're in there, first of all, the bakchaks are not permanent, which means that they are changing. It's not like they stay there and they stick there like sesame seeds and they don't change. They actually evolve and they change. They also replicate. They can also, and when you see bakchaks, we're going to talk about this later in this course, but when you see multiple things happening at once, like for me to move my hand from here to here, that experience, okay, those are all these bakchaks that are firing for you to be able to experience my hand moving from here to here. And they're not just one bok chok. It's like a bunch of different bok choks. It's almost like equivalent to a movie film, like the speed of film. Like the more frames per second, the more they stitch together and it looks like it's one movement rather than segments of movements. So that's another way to think of it. Yes.
Nerdy little side.
I will try. Yes, go ahead.
60 per second is about the lowest. That's the lowest frequency you can hear as a tone.
Yeah.
Lower than that, it sounds like individual events.
Oh, it does?
Yeah.
And sound?
It sounds like what?
Oh, that's so cool.
Like the tone of like it talks about like the slowest you can
hear.
You can perceive thoughts or individual karma.
Yeah, it's equivalent.
If you've been listening, 60 hertz.
Yeah.
The vibration is about the slowest that you hear as a tone as opposed to a rhythm.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's cool.
What about when you're on drugs, though?
I asked you today.
I mean, I'm not trying to.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm just curious.
I'll send you some YouTube.
That's good.
Okay, so we're gonna when do they ripen? So what they're saying is when the conditions are right, the mental seeds ripen into a perception of something. They don't go into detail of when they ripen, but they do say that there has to be the right conditions. And we will talk about different conditions of how karmas ripen. Because what we talked about last class, if you remember, there are ways where you can actually slow down or stop ripenings of seeds. But you have to create the conditions and the environments to do it. Which makes sense. Like for most of us that are fairly stable, you're not going to just freak out for the sake of freaking out. Like there's a condition that's being cultivated in order for you to have moments of joy and anxiety and sadness and all the different emotions, right? So there's these bok choks don't just fire off randomly, or else it would be really bizarre to be in a room full of people. There are conditions that allow for these certain bok choks to ripen at certain times. Okay. All right. Middle way school. So in the Prasangikas now are saying, all right, middle way. For the most part, we kind of believe in the same things. However, we don't really accept this idea of this foundation consciousness. Like that doesn't need to exist. Like why do bok choks have to go somewhere? Does it need to really be that? So what middle way says is they actually are. They are the karmic seeds, they say, stay with you. They call it the simple me. It says that it's part of your stream of mind. It's your basic consciousness. It's the flow of who you are, your consciousness, not who you are physically.
This is middle way speaking?
This is middle way speaking. They're saying that karma, the bok choks, don't have to go somewhere. It doesn't go into a storage unit. It's saying that it is in you.
What is you?
You, the way that they speak about it is either they say simple version of you, they say they say stream of mind is another way I've heard it. They say you, the way you see, the way that you, the essence of you.
But is it like, it can't be physical matter then, so doesn't it kind of in a way go back to Kunshi, like whatever you as your consciousness defines itself as?
No, because it's not like a Kunshi, because it's not, unless you define yourself as your Kunshi, but the mind-only school doesn't believe that. And neither does the middle way school. They don't believe in Kunshi. They believe in your six consciousness that all come together. But they're saying that your karmic seeds, it doesn't go somewhere. It is in you.
It is you.
It is you. You are. Yeah. Yeah. That's another way to put it. Yeah. You are your karmic seeds. Like it is stored in you. That's
and this you is separate from the six consciousnesses?
This is.
Or it is the sum of the six consciousnesses?
I would say that it's probably the sum.
Wait, isn't the middle way in the independent school?
It's a Prasangika school, the highest school.
The highest school.
Yeah, that we had in the charts. So now we're going into Yeah, now we're going to Prasangika middle way, the highest school. This is the highest school that we have. Okay.
Are they saying that they're not saying that the karmic seeds are the sum total of you? There's other parts of you.
No, they're not saying the karmic seeds are you at all. They're saying that the karmic seeds they're stored within, they stay with you. They're not stored elsewhere.
Okay.
That's all they're saying.
But there's you and there's karmic seeds, and those karmic seeds are stored with you.
Yeah, they're part of you.
Right.
Yeah, this is kind of another way to look at it. Yes.
So like I have the karma to project myself moment to moment, and the self that I project moment to moment is a self that has these tendencies, whether or not they are ripening in that moment or not. But the self that I have the karma to in each moment.
Yeah.
Part of it is even these inner aspects of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
That works. Yep.
And they use the term mind stream in that?
They don't technically use the word mind stream. They actually just say simple me or simple you. I've heard it as mind stream, but they actually don't use that word. Yeah. It's much more simple than that. It's like it's you. And that also, like I remember when John Stillwell taught this to my class, to me, or when I received this teaching is what I should say. The way that he talked about it, and we were just talking about this recently too, but the way, that was talked about is it's one of those, I know it's not the best answer. It's one of those things where you do have to sit with it and you cook it. And that's just where he leaves it at. And actually, Geshe Michael does the same thing, especially with this particular explanation. There's not much more that you can go from that. That's what the expression is.
And this is in
the Prasangika school.
This is Jason Kappa's commentary, sort of as a building off of the mindfulness school.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Can we say Tokbe?
Tokbe.
Taksam. Tokbe. Taksam. So Tokbe, so now we're moving into the Prasangika school. So Tokbe is by your own conception, and Taksam is just labeled. And what that means is the world is just what you label it. So there's a verse in your homework, in the reading, by Upali, who talks about how heaven is made by your mind, and Shantideva refutes back and says, well, so is hell. Hell is made by your mind as well. And so this idea is that things do come from your mind. It's not that far off in the Prasangika school. However, what they are saying is that the differences in the mind-only school, they believe that when you look at someone screaming at you, that is an emanation of your mind. In the higher school, they're saying that when you see someone yelling at you, that's not an emanation of your mind, but rather it's a label that you put on. You have taken parts of that person screaming at you, whether it's their eyes or their mouth or the sound or their face and the colors, and you've taken all these different parts and you've arranged it in a way by these indications, and you put it together, and then you say, angry person yelling at me. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So it is similar but subtly different. And that's where, when we talk about chapstick, like, how do you know, and this is how emptiness, like not all, but some emptiness meditations can go, right? But we talk about parts, like, how do you know that this is actually chapstick? Like, how do you guys know that this is chapstick? You've looked at it and you decide, like, it looks like something that could be, but it could actually be mascara, or it could actually be some sort of really cool, like, food, like a tube that I can squeeze and put in my mouth. Like, how do you know that this, does it say, like, how, right? You've taken something and based on its size, like, how do you even know that there's a back? Like, how do you know that this isn't, no, really, how do you know that I'm not just holding up a card and it's an illusion? You don't know that. You don't actually know that.
Well, from your senses, because you touch the back of it, right?
But you can't see the back of my thumb. You don't really know that I'm doing it. You don't see it. Like, you don't see it from my perspective.
But did it roll off the table earlier?
Well, you deduced it, right? But like, even if I was like, "Hey guys, what's this?" You know, you wouldn't be like, "That's chapstick." I mean, this brand doesn't even. You don't even sell this brand in the U.S. By the way, this isn't even a U.S. brand. Yeah, I love it. Oh my god, I buy packs like bulk when I go to Europe. Okay, anyway. But you know, like, it's so interesting that you all know. I actually thought that you wouldn't know, and so what they're saying is that. In the mind-only school is that you look at certain things and certain aspects and you take parts of it based on its color, its size, its dimension, and you associate it with it, and then you decide to label chapstick. And we do that all the time. Like, we do it with people. Like, how many times have you seen somebody, I don't know if this has happened to you, but you see someone in a room and they look a certain way and they sound a certain way, and then you think, oh, that person's really mean. Right? And you're like, they're a mean person. And then don't you love it when someone's like, no, once you get to know them, they're so nice. You're like, really? That person looks really mean, like scary. Right? And we do that. We create based on and that's also based on our karmas, right? We have certain type of ideologies that we label onto certain people, certain things, what they are, what they're not, what they, and we take those parts and we put it together, and then what we do, we put a label on it. We're like, oh, he's hot. Like, is he self-existently hot? No, because not all of us want him, but you deduce these parts and we label that. And so that's what that's what the Prasangika school is saying, is that it's not that everything is an emanation coming from your mind. It's that there are things out there that you're now labeling and saying, based on its parts, this is how you function in the world, and you're labeling it. It's not saying that it doesn't come from your mind. It is saying but it's not the same way in which the mind-only school talks about it. The mind-only school speaks about it in a way where it's the person screaming at you. When you see someone screaming at you, it's an aspect of your mind that you're seeing. Right? If I'm sitting here yelling at you, what the mind-only school says is that me screaming at you is just a reflection of your mind.
But the higher guys are saying, whatever I'm seeing is an emanation, I'm just seeing different parts and putting them together. What
the higher school is saying is that what you see in front of you is not just an emanation of your mind. Everything isn't just your mind, but in fact that there are parts that you put together to then create something that you've now labeled.
There's an objective reality out there that I'm seeing?
There is something that is functioning out there. Like, there's something here that is functioning that you're labeling onto this thing, lips or chapstick. Right. But there is something here.
That sounds like Prasangika, not Prasangika.
That's Prasangika.
In Prasangika, everything is your projection, including the label, including the
everything is a projection. It's still a projection. You're still projecting onto here. You're projecting onto here, but you're not saying that this is an emanation of your mind. It's still a projection that's coming in.
The fact that there's something in physical existence is also a projection.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yes, of course. Sure. Yes, of course. Okay. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so in the higher school,
yes,
is there a physical reality out there or not?
Oh, it is still your mind that is projecting onto this object. But are you saying, is there an actual physical reality? So here's the thing. These schools don't believe that anything is self-existent in nature. The realities that you're experiencing, everything is coming from, like, they're all different.
Self-existent and physical reality seem to be not the same concept. So self-existent to me means defined, and physical reality means stuff. So that's where
Wait, I'm sorry, one more time?
Tripping up on this.
Can you say that again?
Emptiness is about definition, right? So I look at it and I see a chew toy, I look at it and I see a pen. To me, there's still a physical reality there that's outside of me. That has nothing to do with me. There's a physical reality out there. But two people can look at it and see different things because they are projecting a definition on it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I guess my first question is there any school that believes what I just said?
That there's a physical reality that actually exists, self-existently.
Separate and apart from me, there's something there with the mass, with the color red, with whatever's going on, right? That if you grabbed it, it would be hard, that it's there. And that I'm seeing a chapstick and he's seeing a chew toy, but that's because we're bringing definitions to what we're seeing based on our own knowledge or karma or whatever you want to call it. But that thing still exists. Like outside of my mind, the thing exists. It's there. There's a red thing weighing 4 ounces that's there. So I guess my first question is just simply, is anything I've said true in any Buddhist school?
There are aspects of what you said that are true in a Buddhist school, but not in all aspects that are in one Buddhist school. Yeah. And I think the thing, there are lower schools.
So I thought what you were saying before with these two schools was that one of them was saying, dude, it doesn't exist at all outside of your mind, and you're just projecting that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the other school was saying, it does exist outside of your mind, but it's the way I just described it, where it's kind of definitional, and you're just sort of deducing what it is based on sort of definition. But you seem to be saying this second school, the whatever you call it,
the Prasangika school,
isn't even saying that. They're saying it doesn't exist at all. They're basically in line with the first guys.
They're very close to the first guys.
Right. So is it correct that both of them are saying it doesn't exist at all? It's just an emanation. But the second guys are saying it's not one emanation. It's that you're putting a bunch of emanations out there and putting them together in your mind.
Well, they don't use the word emanation, but they say that you do project. You look at something that's out there that's coming from your mind, and you take pieces of it together to then create a label. The thing is that neither school believes that anything is self-existent. They don't believe that.
By self-existent,
it doesn't
mean no material substance to it outside of.
The way that you're talking about it is you try. It's difficult because the way you even define it is defined around self-existence. That you're saying this physically is here. And what they're saying is, it's only based here based on your karma to be able to see it and experience it. But it doesn't exist. I don't know how else to say this. Self-existently.
There's no material world.
There is physical and there is mental. There's a material world, but the material world exists because of the way you perceive it.
That's again, that to me sounds very circular. It does. The material world either exists or it doesn't. I can perceive
it's
it
not like that.
the way you would.
It's not like that though. That's not how. That's
the definition of material world.
No, but that's the definition you're using. That's your definition of a material world.
No, that's a different. That's a word that you can look.
But we just said there's a physical world. I mean, that's a nice way to put it, Stephen, because it's your. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to impose these ideas into something that you're saying there still is matter. There still is physical matter. Things do still exist. And what they're saying is that's not true. It doesn't matter. There's physical, there's mental, there are aspects of it that those are true, but it doesn't exist the way in which you think it exists. That's what it is.
It's a longer conversation.
There's not like a chapstick that exists behind the perception of your chapstick.
Yeah.
we keep flipping back and forth between material and what it's definitional. Like, is there something that exists that has matter, substance, weight, separate and apart from whatever I think of it?
It's not what you think of it insofar as I've decided that this is the way that it is.
Well, you don't just, it's your karma to be, yeah,
different.
that's, yeah.
Right.
It's more baseline, it's much more minute and subtle than this.
Like, you have the karma to see this, but not everybody who walks in this room has a karma to see it. You just make the assumption because it exists for you, it exists for all beings. But that's not true. Someone can come in and have the karma to not be able to actually see. And so does it mean it doesn't exist for them? Yeah, it doesn't exist for them. Like,
I'm not aware of any kind of objective proof to what you just said. So, like gravity. Like, I don't think there's anybody here or anywhere that can defy gravity and just say, you know what? My karma is that I float.
But that's according to you.
No, it's I find somebody.
Well, I think if we look at something a little bit less tangible and prove it in those terms, then you can see if it also holds true for a tangible reality. So if when G described, there's this person, you think they're mean, for the other person they're not mean, that is the emptiness of that person's personality.
I have no issue with that because we're not really talking about things like matter, physical world, gravity. If you're saying my projection, I think she's mean, and you're like, no, I think she's really nice. We're bringing a whole lot of stuff onto that. But if I say she's sitting there, she's got this shape, and you say, oh no, that's an elephant. Mm-hmm. But unless you've got a historic definition of an elephant, that's
sure. So what about G 10 years ago?
What about G 10 years ago?
Same G?
I would say it was the same. It was like this core self that has grown into what she is now.
Okay, I would suggest that you look at matter over time as a way to look at the emptiness of the physical stuff.
The fact that matter disintegrates or changes over
It's
time.
proof of its emptiness. According to
it's
this
not
book.
proof that it's not matter. It's
It's
not
not
proof that
saying it's not matter.
It's not matter. It's just
It's
saying
just the
that
idea of like a
we're
breath.
defining its existing, it being real as what it's empty of. It's real because it's empty of what's not actually there to begin with.
Because if it was that chapstick could never have been anything but chapstick. It couldn't have been the base plastic that was melted down to create a tube, and it could not ever disintegrate into the earth or run low on chapstick.
It's chapstick now. And it was a petroleum product, a year ago.
Okay, so is it chapstick or is it petroleum product?
Now it's chapstick.
Okay, now.
Right. Now it's
That's
chapstick.
its emptiness.
we'll continue this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on. So we're at Buddhist explanation for mind only. So what they're saying is, mind only says, the Buddha says that the universe is said to be mind only in order to ... And so what, I'm just going to go over very quickly. There's just 2 points. The reason why the mind only school took it literally, and what the Prasangika school is saying is actually, it's not that he was saying that the world is mind only. What he's trying to really bring up are 2 points. One, he says, is the negative point. Or Prasangika school says this. Chandrakirti says this. Master Chandrakirti says that the first one, the reason why he said that the universe is said to be only mind only is because he's trying to deny that it could be the product of anything else, such as a creator being. So it really is to defy the concept that there is a creator being that creates all things. In fact, it is you that is creating your world. And then the second part, he says, as a positive sense, is that it's to assert that the mind is its primary source due to its role in the creation and ripening of karma. That mainly, the main point of this is that mind is the main thing. It's the main cause, and things are produced by mind. Okay? And And those are the main things that they're just trying to clarify, saying, you know what, mind only, it's not that he really meant that it's just mind only. He was trying to ensure that you understand that there isn't a creator being and that all things do come from your mind, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everything is an emanation of your mind in the way the mind only expresses it. Okay, we ran late. I'm sorry. I think that, oh, sorry, do you need a back? Oh, yeah, sure. What I do want to just end on is kind of broad strokes and the way that I have, like the main key takeaways of how karma applies to you and what to think about and how it can benefit you and be more tactical. I think that, and this is just from my own experience and something that I've been thinking a lot about as well over the years of my practice. There are a lot of the nitty-gritty details that we'll be covering and we'll continue to cover, which are really important, I think, as a practitioner to understand. However, I also think it's just as important to look at karma in a way where, like, the best way it's been taught to me and expressed about karma has been looking at karma as a way to shape your mind. Not so much just as like, if you do this, you get this, but more so of it helps cultivate the contents of your mind. It creates the posture of who you are and the world in which you have. Because when you think, I remember one of the questions, Rachel, you had like earlier in the course was, well, you know, and people ask us all the time, like, how do good things happen to bad people, right? Or like, how do bad people thrive? And you see so much success and I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And our reasoning or rationale has been that karma also has time. It doesn't ripen immediately. We all know that, right? We've all experienced some aspect of that. I can give you $1,000 today. It doesn't mean I'm going to get 10 grand tomorrow, or even 1,000 tomorrow, or even $1, right? So we do have these, we've talked about how it does take time. And I think that one of the biggest challenges I've had was always been, well, how am I going to account for my karma? And starting to act in a way where you're creating karma points, like you're collecting, like, oh, that's going to be a karma, you know? And I think that starts to lose the essence of the practice. And the practice really, when I think about bakchaks, when I think about karma, has really been, how is this going to help frame up the quality of my mind? And that's why bakchaks are so important. The better bakchaks you have, the more positive bakchaks you have, the more positive experiences you'll have. Right? If you have toxic bakchaks and toxic ways of thinking, your world will be toxic. And if you have positive ways of thinking that are full of compassion and love and generosity and the virtues that we've talked about, then your world will start to be that. And so it's like, to me, it's about how do you create certain bakchaks, not necessarily to be able to get things or to experience things, but to be able to have a state of mind that creates a certain quality that I want, irregardless of my outside world, right? Irregardless, because there are going to be situations I'm going to be in where my karma may not necessarily be able to shift over, where I can live in a paradise at the moment. I live in New York City. It's far from paradise, right? Even on a great day. And so the question is then, how can I think about my karma and my bakchaks so that it gives me, because what that does is it empowers me to be able to consider how I want to show up in life. You know, it's like the more positive bakchaks I collect allows me to show up in life a certain way versus another way. And that has been one of the best ways that I've thought about karma for me. And I wanted to share that with you because it's easy to get into things and be like, I'm going to help so-and-so. And sure, you're going to help somebody. And at some point, at some time in your life, whether it's this or future lives, it will come back to you. But in the most immediate sense, the way that I find it to be the most beneficial is how does it start to be able to shape the posture of who you are and the quality of your mindset, irregardless of the situation, so that when you're stuck in traffic or you have a really crappy day or you're fighting with your partner and all these bad things are happening, that you're not getting all wound up and crazy about it, that you can actually create a state of mind because you've collected these bakchaks, right, that are positive, and you continue to just be able to sit back and relax. Why is His Holiness the Dalai Lama look so like calm all the time? He's definitely not on drugs. or CBD, from what I know, right? No, we're just. But you know what I mean? Like, he can show up in a certain way and be able to experience atrocities, thank you, in a certain way because of the way the bakchaks he's planted, right? And so that to me has been one of the best ways. And if that helps you, I hope it helps you. If not, that's fine. Just take it or leave it. But that is one way I've thought about karma. Okay. All right.
Sashi.
Sange Shindu Nite Uwagi Roku Nanda Shinda Shuparsho Yan Guru Radhamanda Kamyatayami Sinam Yeshe Sosokshin Sinam Yeshe Vijune Dhamma Kuni Parsho. It's a quick dedication. Take a moment and rejoice for attending class, making the effort to be here, be present, and be open. Rejoice in something new that you learned or something that had value, that adds value to your life or to the people that you know around you. Commend yourself and dedicate all your efforts to be here, to listen, to be present, to be engaged. Dedicate all that effort to one person or maybe even a few different people. Wishing them all the things that they want in life. Wishing them to be free from any kind of suffering. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.